Not every home is meant to be lived in. Some houses don't protect you, they absorb you. You can clean the floors, you can light a candle, you can hang your dreams on the walls and still wake up exhausted. Why? Because the house itself is not just a place you enter, it's a field you move through. A silent partner in your well-being or a quiet force pulling your energy down. We grow up thinking a house is shelter. 4 walls, a roof, perhaps a mortgage or lease, a space that keeps the rain out and the valuables in. But in truth, in Feng Shui and in Buddhist metaphysics, a house is much more than that. It is a mirror. It is a message. It is an instrument that either holds life force or scatters it. It either welcomes qi or bleeds it through cracks you cannot see. This isn't about superstition, and it's not about fear. This is about clarity, discernment, the same kind of ancient wisdom that watches the direction of wind and shadow, not because it's afraid of ghosts, but because it knows energy doesn't lie. In Buddhist practice, the body is treated like a temple, not because of vanity, but because what enters the body shapes what we become. Breath, thought, intention, space. And in Feng Shui, the house is treated the same way. It is not just a structure, it is a vessel. A living architecture that either helps you rise or quietly asks you to shrink. Have you ever walked into a house that made you feel tight in the chest, even if it was beautiful? Or a small, humble cottage that instantly made you feel grounded, even without expensive furniture? That's not decor, that's energy. Sometimes what drains us isn't our job. It isn't our partner. It isn't even our mindset. It's the layout of the place we sleep. It's the direction of the door we pass through every morning. It's the shadow falling across the front step, or the tree leaning inward like a silent watcher of your luck. We've all seen them. Homes where the garden refuses to bloom, no matter how often it's watered. Homes where light enters but never lingers. Homes where dreams dissolve into chores and conversations grow colder by the week. And still, we think it's just life. We blame the stress, the traffic, the economy, but we rarely pause and ask, is it possible that this space is misaligned? Not with the stars, but with our own purpose? In today's video, we'll step away from the fear-based language of curses and haunted rooms. We're not here to chase shadows. We're here to understand why some homes support us and some quietly undo us. This is about spatial honesty. It's about learning to read the signs your house may be sending. Not just broken things or peeling paint, but the spiritual messages encoded in how energy flows, where it halts and where it echoes. We'll explore 9 signs that a house may be draining your fortune, not magically, but energetically. Signs that seem harmless at first glance, a cracked wall, a withering tree, a hallway of aligned doors, yet each one carries a vibration. And over time, that vibration shapes your sleep, your clarity, your finances, your choices. We'll look at how old wells under the floorboards might store unspoken grief. We'll see how vertical lines in architecture, cracks, beams, alignment, can act like blades to your peace. We'll understand why too much darkness in a house isn't cozy. It's karmic. And we'll do this not to panic, but to pause, to become mindful not just of what we place in our homes, but of what our homes place in us. Because where you live is never neutral. Your environment is part of your practice, whether you call it that or not. As one Zen master said, before you begin to meditate, clean the space where your thoughts will land. In the same way, before you try to manifest, earn, or plan, consider whether the house you live in is capable of holding what you're asking for. Is it energetically sound? Or is it quietly scattering the very fortune you are working so hard to invite? Because the truth is simple, it's not how much money you have that matters. It's whether your home knows how to keep it, and that's where we begin. If this reflection is already shifting how you see your space, I invite you to stay with me through the end of this video. Each sign we explore is practical, grounded, and repairable. You don't need to move, you don't need to knock down walls, you don't need to fear the space you're in, but you do need to see it clearly, and clarity begins here. If this video speaks to you, if it gives language to something you've felt but haven't known how to name, then please help me continue this work. Before we go deeper, I gently ask, Leave a like, share this with someone who's been struggling to feel at home in their home, and subscribe to New Day Mindfulness. I'm on a quiet mission to reach my first 1,000 subscribers, not just as a number, but as a threshold where this channel can grow, thrive, and offer more wisdom to those who walk this path with care. Every like, every comment, every share helps this message reach someone who needs it. And now, let's begin the journey through space, through symbol, through stillness, toward a home that finally holds what you've been seeking. Shall we continue? Section 1, the dead tree in the dying field. When life stops at the gate, some signs don't speak in words. They don't announce themselves with warning sirens or broken glass. Instead, they stand quietly outside your home, rooted in soil and silence, showing you without ever saying so that something vital has stopped moving. In Feng Shui, the area directly outside the main door is not just an aesthetic front yard. It is called the Bright Hall, a transitional space where qi gathers before entering the home. Like the lungs filling with breath before oxygen touches the bloodstream, this zone is where the life force collects, harmonizes, and prepares to enter the dwelling. It is where the universe pauses before it flows. And so when you find a tree standing directly at this gate, lifeless, leafless, unresponsive to sun or water, it is never just a dead tree. It is a symbol, a mirror, a soft but steady interruption in the inhale of energy. There's a saying in Buddhist architecture, the gate does not just open, it breathes. But what happens when something heavy leans across that breath, day after day? Let me bring this down to earth with a story that unfolded in Oregon a few years ago. A couple, gentle, hardworking people, bought their dream home just outside Portland. It was the kind of property that felt right at first glance. Modern lines, wide windows, a sweeping driveway, and one magnificent cedar tree standing firm near the front gate. Its branches arched like an umbrella, sheltering the walkway in soft shadow. At first, they thought of it as a guardian, a symbol of wisdom and protection. They even joked that it gave the house a monk-like presence. But 2 years later, everything changed. The tree began to yellow, not seasonally, not gradually, but suddenly. There were no signs of infestation, no chemical damage, no environmental stressors. The arborist they called was puzzled. "Some trees just give up," he said, shaking his head. The phrase stayed with them. Soon after, their family business, a small artisanal bakery, saw a noticeable drop in sales, not just from the economy, but from an inexplicable quiet that began to grow around them. Deliveries delayed, contracts revoked. Clients who once praised their work vanished without cause. They weren't just losing money, they were losing momentum. Their home, once vibrant and filled with laughter, felt quieter, colder, heavier. They began spending less time in the front yard. The tree looked worse each month. Moss began forming around the base. The wind no longer rustled its branches. Birds stopped nesting in it. And gradually, the couple stopped walking through the main gate. They began using the side door instead. One day, a friend visiting from Taiwan, a landscape designer trained in classical Feng Shui, stood outside and looked at the tree in silence. Then he said softly, "You think the tree died with you, but it may have died first and taken you with it." His words weren't cruel, they were clear. He explained that in traditional energy mapping, the front of the house is the face of the home, and the tree, standing so tall and so central, had acted like a filter between them and the energy of the world. When it was alive, that was fine. But now, every drop of qi, every visitor, every opportunity, every possibility had to pass through the grief and stagnation of a dying sentinel. They weren't protected, they were cloaked. More than that, he explained, the entrance to a home is like the nostrils of the body. It receives what is vital. But if a heavy shadow blocks that entry point, the house inhales shallowly. It lives in a state of fatigue. And no matter how much you clean the kitchen or refresh the walls inside, if the energy at the gate is weary, the house will be too. In Buddhism, breath is not just air. It is insight, clarity, continuity. A shallow breath cannot support deep life. Likewise, a blocked threshold, physical or energetic, cannot support our short long-term abundance. So what should you do if the front of your home is marked by such a presence? In some cases, yes, removal is the clearest solution. But removing a dead tree, especially one that has watched over your home for years, is never just about cutting wood. It must be done with reverence, with ritual, with farewell. Like releasing old karma that has run its course. But in many cases, removal may not be possible. Whether due to regulation, emotion, or structural integration, the tree remains. And in those cases, we must shift the energy around it. One powerful method is reanimation, not of the tree, but of the field. Use movement. Place a string of lightweight prayer flags near the base, so that even a slight breeze brings color and rhythm. Use reflection. Hang a small mirror facing outward from beneath the tree's branches, redirecting any stale chi that rests there. Use intention. Plant a circle of low-growing, flowering plants around the base, ones that do not need deep roots, but offer vibrancy. You can also use sound. Wind chimes made of bamboo or brass placed nearby can gently activate the stillness without disruption. In Feng Shui, this is known as dispersing the shadow, not fighting it, but reminding it that time is still moving. And perhaps most importantly, begin walking through the front door again. Even if only once a day, make it a practice. Let your presence break the stagnation. Let your feet reclaim the path. A house that forgets its entrance becomes a body that forgets to breathe deeply. Sometimes the remedy is not dramatic. It is gentle. It is consistent. It is respectful. The couple in Oregon did not cut their tree. They could not, but they did begin to honor it differently. They cleared the overgrowth. They placed a ring of river stones around the base, each one with a written intention for their future. They installed a warm light beneath it, so that at night it became not a shadow, but a glow. They began walking through the front door again, and in time the house felt different. Not lighter perhaps, but more awake. Their business didn't explode, but it steadied. Their sleep deepened, their laughter returned, and most of all, they learned to see the tree not as a barrier, but as a lesson. A silent reminder that even the most beautiful protectors must be seen clearly when they begin to die. Because life must flow, chi must move, and the house, like the breath, must remain open. So ask yourself gently, what greets you at your gate? Is it alive? Is it welcoming? Or has it grown still, heavy, quiet? Sometimes the path to prosperity begins not in your budget or your ambition, but in the roots outside your door. Section 2, the vertical crack. When the backbone splits, a wall isn't just a wall, it is the spine of a room, the anchor of an experience. And when it splits, vertically, silently, slowly, it doesn't just fracture plaster. It fractures presence. It divides attention. And sometimes it divides people. Most homeowners, when they notice a crack along a wall, reach instinctively for explanations. They call contractors, engineers, property inspectors. They're told it's settling, or a shift in temperature, or the natural movement of time. And structurally, that may be true. But energetically, especially in the language of Feng Shui, something deeper is happening. In Buddhist tradition, structure reflects state. Just as posture reveals the story of the body, architecture reveals the story of the soul. And when a vertical crack slices through the central wall of a home, particularly in a gathering space like a living room or family room, it does more than damage the paint. It sends a silent message to everyone who passes. Something has separated. Something no longer holds. This story begins in Seoul, where a young couple, a software developer and an elementary school teacher, moved into a modest but promising apartment. It had light, modern fixtures, and a small balcony facing a quiet street. It was their first home together after marriage. Their son had just turned 6 months old. On the surface, everything looked aligned, but within weeks of moving in, subtle tensions began to grow. Harmless disagreements turned into repetitive arguments. Nights became restless. The baby, who had previously slept soundly, began to wake up crying, always around 2 or 3 a.m. At first, they blamed stress, then the change in environment, then parenting fatigue. But it wasn't until the wife was rearranging the furniture one afternoon, trying to bring more warmth into the room, that she noticed it. A fine hairline crack running from the ceiling to the floor on the central wall. It was pale, almost invisible in certain light, but once seen, it was hard to ignore. It ran straight down the spine of the room, vertical, clean, quietly present, like a scar on a body that forgot it had been hurt. They hadn't noticed it when they moved in, or perhaps they hadn't wanted to see it. Over the next few days, their eyes returned to it again and again. It was as if something hidden had finally been named. The line didn't just divide the wall, it divided the energy of the room. Conversations that once flowed easily now felt brittle. Their son's toys remained scattered to one side of the room only, and even their Wi-Fi signal, oddly, grew weaker near that wall. In Feng Shui, a vertical crack is not just a blemish. It's a split in coherence, a break in the energetic spine of the space. Think of the wall as you would the backbone of a body. It carries energy, it stabilizes form, it holds uprightness, alignment, transmission. When that spine cracks, what travels through it, be it electrical current, emotional communication, or ambient stillness, becomes erratic. The space begins to leak meaning. People in the room sense that something is off, even if they can't articulate it. They grow more defensive, less attuned, more prone to misinterpret each other. In Buddhist terms, this reflects what is called dukkha, not just suffering, but misalignment, a dislocation from natural balance. And in the physical body, dukkha often arises in the spine when posture collapses. In a home, it arises when the main wall is injured, unacknowledged, and unrepaired. Back in Seoul, the couple made a decision. They would not simply patch the crack. They would restore the wall with intention. They invited a Feng Shui consultant, not for superstition, but for insight. She explained that the wall, as the central anchor of the home's energy field, required not just mending, but realignment. And more than that, it needed reinforcement, not physical, but symbolic. They started by clearing the room entirely. Furniture, rugs, toys all moved out. The space was stripped down to silence. Then with gentle hands, they filled the crack. They repainted the entire wall in a warm earth tone, a shade between clay and sand. In Feng Shui, earth tones provide grounding, stability, a sense of holding. And since the wall functioned as the spine of the room, they chose a color that mirrored the inner organs of trust and digestion. But they didn't stop there. Once the paint dried, they placed an image at the heart of the wall, a hand-painted Enso circle, a Zen symbol representing completeness, simplicity, and the moment of clarity that arises when all grasping ceases. The circle was open, intentionally, not closed. It allowed for air, for possibility, for breath. Each morning for a week, they lit a single stick of sandalwood incense and bowed gently before the wall, not in worship, but in restoration, as if apologizing to the room for having ignored what it tried to say. By the end of the month, the tension in their conversations softened. Their son began sleeping through the night again. Guests who visited often commented that the space felt quieter, more whole. So what changed? Not just the wall, but their relationship to it. You see, energy doesn't only move through space, it moves through attention. And when we ignore the symbolic wounds in our we also ignore the parts of ourselves that are calling for integration. A cracked wall might seem small, cosmetic, insignificant. But if that wall holds your family's laughter, your evening meals, your moments of pause, then a split in that surface becomes a split in the continuity of experience. It becomes a space where attention scatters, where emotions snag, where connection grows thin. In Buddhist teachings, the spine is often called the middle pillar. In meditation, all energy is trained to align with it. Why? Because it is the path through which clarity flows. Your central wall is no different. It is the architectural spine of your home's energetic body. It deserves that same alignment, that same respect. If you see a crack, don't just patch it. Ask, what has been strained here? What truth is the space trying to reflect back to me? Then, when you repair it, do so with reverence. Choose a grounding color. Place a symbol of unity, whether a circle, a tree, or even a family photo framed in harmony. Let the wall become not just mended, but renewed. And don't forget the silence. Sometimes the most powerful restoration begins not in action, but in pausing to witness the space you've walked past too quickly. Because a wall that cracks is not broken. It is speaking. And perhaps, when you listen closely, it's not just the room that heals, but the relationships inside it. Section 3. Houses without sun. Cold homes, cold karma. There are homes where sunlight lingers, and there are homes where it merely visits. The difference isn't always architectural. Sometimes it's karmic. We are often taught to think of sunlight as utility, something to help plants grow, to warm the walls, to reduce the electric bill. But light, in the energetic lexicon of both Buddhism and Feng Shui, is something far deeper. It is not just illumination. It is life's signature. It is the visible presence of yang, active, expressive, vital force. In Buddhist imagery, the sun is more than celestial. It is consciousness itself. The sun rises and the mind awakens. The sun sets and the world returns to stillness. This is not romanticism, it is spiritual rhythm. And when a home lacks that rhythm, when morning arrives but does not enter, it begins to suffer a quiet fatigue. There are houses that look beautiful on paper, well-designed, efficient, even luxurious. But if they fail to receive the sun, they begin to lose more than brightness. They lose clarity, they lose breath. They lose the energetic pulse that keeps a space alive. This is not metaphor, it is observation. In classical Feng Shui, light is one of the primary carriers of qi. It is how energy first announces its presence. It moves in waves, not just across surfaces, but into the corners of thought, the seams of emotion, the spine of conversation. And when sunlight is absent or blocked, the house becomes overly yin. Not in the nourishing, quiet sense, but in the stagnant, heavy, damp sense. The home begins to trap energy, not circulate it. Rooms become filled with echo, but no resonance. Sleep may increase, but restfulness does not. Decision-making grows slower. Appetite softens. Ideas seem to take longer to arrive. There's a difference between quiet and cold, between stillness and suffocation. Consider the story of a woman named Lena, a novelist living alone in Bergen, Norway. Her apartment was modest and modern, perched near the edge of a fjord where light moves sideways even in the best seasons. During winter, the sun was something she read about, not something she lived under. The windows faced northwest, which meant morning light never truly entered, and by noon the rooms had returned to shadow. At first, she found it romantic. The dimness seemed moody, introspective. It felt like the right environment for writing. But over time, her prose dulled. Her characters lost their edges. Mornings blurred into afternoons. She slept longer, but woke groggy. Coffee did nothing. Eventually, she began to dread the desk. Her fingers hesitated on the keyboard. The home, once her cocoon, had become a kind of energetic fog, but something in her resisted giving up. She didn't move. She listened. In late February, Lena read an essay on Feng Shui and the importance of yang infusion. The article explained that natural light is not just ambiance, it is a carrier of forward movement. In homes, sunlight must enter and remain, not just bounce off glass. It must find a place to land, reflect, be received. The text described the mirroring of yang, a practice where you do not chase sunlight, but invite it. Section 3. Houses without sun. Cold homes, cold karma. There are homes where sunlight lingers, and there are homes where it merely visits. The difference isn't always architectural, sometimes it's karmic. We are often taught to think of sunlight as utility, something to help plants grow, to warm the walls, to reduce the electric bill. But light, in the energetic lexicon of both Buddhism and Feng Shui, is something far deeper. It is not just illumination, it is life's signature. It is the visible presence of yang, active, expressive, vital force. In Buddhist imagery, the sun is more than celestial. It is consciousness itself. The sun rises and the mind awakens. The sun sets and the world returns to stillness. This is not romanticism, it is spiritual rhythm. And when a home lacks that rhythm, when morning arrives but does not enter, it begins to suffer a quiet fatigue. There are houses that look beautiful on paper, well-designed, efficient, even luxurious. But if they fail to receive the sun, they begin to lose more than brightness. They lose clarity, they lose breath, they lose the energetic pulse that keeps a space alive. This is not metaphor, it is observation. In classical Feng Shui, light is one of the primary carriers of qi. It is how energy first announces its presence. It moves in waves not just across surfaces, but into the corners of thought, the seams of emotion, the spine of conversation. And when sunlight is absent or blocked, the house becomes overly yin, not in the nourishing quiet sense, but in the stagnant, heavy, damp sense. The home begins to trap energy, not circulate it. Rooms become filled with echo, but no resonance. Sleep may increase, but restfulness does not. Decision-making grows slower. Appetite softens. Ideas seem to take longer to arrive. There's a difference between quiet and cold, between stillness and suffocation. Consider the story of a woman named Lena, a novelist living alone in Bergen, Norway. Her apartment was modest and modern, perched near the edge of a fjord where light moves sideways even in the best seasons. During winter, the sun was something she read about, not something she lived under. The windows faced northwest, which meant morning light never truly entered, and by noon, the rooms had returned to shadow. At first, she found it romantic. The dimness seemed moody, introspective. It felt like the right environment for writing, but over time, her prose dulled. Her characters lost their edges. Mornings blurred into afternoons. She slept longer but woke groggy. Coffee did nothing. Eventually, she began to dread the desk. Her fingers hesitated on the keyboard. The home, once her cocoon, had become a kind of energetic fog, but something in her resisted giving up. She didn't move. She listened. In late February, Lena read an essay on Feng Shui and the importance of yang infusion. The article explained that natural light is not just ambiance. It is a carrier of forward movement. In homes, sunlight must enter and remain, not just bounce off glass. It must find a place to land, reflect, be received. The text described the mirroring of yang, a practice where you do not chase sunlight but invite it. Something stirred. She couldn't rebuild her apartment, but she could reshape its relationship with light. Lena contacted a contractor to install 2 modest skylights, one above her writing nook, the other near the dining area. She then took a brass-framed mirror gifted by her grandmother and placed it opposite the window that caught the last light of the day. She added warm-toned linen drapes and removed a heavy bookshelf that had long stood like a barricade between her and the morning. She didn't expect magic. She expected subtlety. What happened surprised her. The first morning light entered, not loudly, but like breath. Her writing table changed temperature, not visibly, but in atmosphere. She began rising earlier, not by alarm, but by instinct. She found herself editing with more certainty, not because her skill had changed, but because something in her rhythm had. She said later, "It wasn't the sun that made me better. It was the return of my own timing. I didn't need motivation. I just needed to feel the world turning again." That's the thing. Sunlight reminds us that the world moves, that life circulates, that clarity arrives not in the mind, but in the field around it. And when a house cannot receive that message, when windows are small, curtains are heavy, and east-facing doors are blocked, the home becomes energetically mute. In Feng Shui, homes without adequate light are considered cold-body dwellings, not evil, not cursed, simply slow. These spaces tend to accumulate yin in excess, emotional weight, mental fog, subtle depression, not loud suffering, just the kind that makes life feel 3 degrees heavier. So what can you do? First, start with awareness. Look at your home with the eyes of qi. Where does the morning enter? Where does it pause? Where does it flee? You don't need an open concept palace. You just need alignment. If sunlight cannot come in directly, borrow it. Use mirrors, but not randomly. Feng Shui teaches that mirrors are not decorations. They are amplifiers. Place one mirror in the room that receives the most consistent natural light. Angle it toward an adjacent area that lacks brightness. Let it act like a conductor, receiving, redirecting, reminding. Use color. Avoid cold grays or sterile whites in sun-starved rooms. Opt for earth tones, terracotta, soft saffron, ochre, or warm woods. These tones do not fake light, they hold it. Use full spectrum lighting if you live in northern latitudes. But don't just turn on lamps, use them rhythmically. Let the house feel the passage of day, brighten the space in the morning, and dim it toward evening. Mimic the sky and your home will begin to remember time. And most of all, open something. A curtain, a door, a habit. Because what the sun teaches is that abundance is not made, it is received. Not in rush, but in readiness. In Buddhist temples, the main meditation halls are always positioned to receive morning light. Not because monks worship the sun, but because they align with its meaning. The sun brings wakefulness, truth, the ability to see things as they are. Let your home do the same. You don't need giant windows, you need intentional light. Let each room receive what it can, and then help the others receive it too. That is harmony. That is energetic kindness. And remember this, a house with no light isn't just dark. It is directionless. It forgets what time it is. It forgets how to rise. So if your home has grown heavy, if your thoughts take longer to form, if your mornings feel like dusk, ask yourself not just what needs to be fixed, but what needs to be lit. Sometimes the change is as simple as a mirror, a new bulb, a table moved 3 feet to the left, and sometimes the change begins with a sentence whispered into a still room. This house deserves sunlight, and so do I. From there, things begin to shift. Section 4, what lurks below, buried wells, bones, or forgotten energy. Most people focus on what they can see, the color of the walls, the angle of a hallway, the way light falls across the kitchen counter. Fewer stop to ask what the house is built upon, what lies beneath the floorboards, below the concrete slab, beyond the visible. And yet, that is where some of the most powerful currents live, not in decoration, but in foundation. In Feng Shui and in many Buddhist-aligned cosmologies, the ground beneath us is not a blank canvas. It is memory, it is karma, it is story. Every layer of soil holds what came before. And though time may erase the marks, the energy remains, soft, silent, sometimes dormant, sometimes not. There is a belief that we live above our own forgotten prayers, above our ancestors' sighs, above every tree that fell, and every ritual that was once whispered to the dirt. And when we build atop those echoes without honoring them, the echoes return, not as ghosts, but as subtle disturbances. Restlessness, confusion, delayed success, inexplicable exhaustion, dreams that tangle. This is not superstition, it is sensitivity. Consider the Buddhist principle of interdependence. Nothing arises on its own. The present is made of the past pressed into form. So too is the land beneath your home. It does not forget what it has held. A well filled in hastily is not simply gone. A burial plot moved in haste is not truly relocated. A battlefield paved over does not forget where blood once ran. The land remembers. The body of the earth has memory. One story comes from Chiang Mai, Thailand, a city where tradition and modernity sleep side by side. A rental property tucked near the old town wall began to change hands frequently. Each new tenant had the same experience: persistent fatigue, restless sleep, nightmares involving water drowning or sinking. Pets refused to enter the living room. Plants in one corner of the house wilted, no matter how carefully they were tended. Eventually, the owner, a kind woman in her 50s who had inherited the home from her uncle, decided to investigate, not just with engineers or real estate agents, but with a local elder steeped in both Buddhist insight and Lana geomancy. He arrived not with instruments, but with silence. He walked the property barefoot, stopping often to place his palm gently on the ground. After some time, he pointed to a square section near the center of the house, where the floor tiles never quite settled evenly. "There was once a well here," he said, "a deep one, filled but not sealed. It still breathes." The woman was stunned. As a child, she had heard mention of a well, long disused and covered over before she was born. But no one spoke of it anymore. No one thought it mattered. "But it does," the elder said. "Water remembers, and if it was buried without ceremony, it waits." In traditional Feng Shui, underground water represents movement, wealth, and memory. But when that water is stagnant, sealed without intention, or denied acknowledgement, It becomes a kind of energetic echo chamber. The qi becomes trapped, misdirected, confused. Instead of flowing, it pulses aimlessly beneath the surface, agitating the home above like a breath that never completes its exhale. The remedy was not demolition, it was reverence. A ceremonial cleansing was arranged, not as exorcism, but as reconciliation. Monks were invited, the space was emptied, incense, chants, and holy water were offered. The old well shaft, still partially intact beneath the tile, was accessed and gently packed with clean, sifted earth. A ring of smooth river stones was placed at the surface, 12, one for each direction. A single Bodhi leaf was set at the center. They didn't erase the well, they marked it, honored it, completed it. Within a month, the energy of the house shifted. The tenant reported her dreams had changed. Instead of drowning, she saw herself floating. The plants began to thrive. The dog curled peacefully near the former site of the disturbance, and for the first time in years, no one moved out. The house became still, not stagnant, just still, like a lake finally free of ripples. This story is not rare. Across the world, homes are unknowingly built over forgotten structures. Dry wells, drainage pits, root cellars, trash burials, even family plots whose boundaries were once marked by prayer and are now obscured by asphalt. Sometimes it's not a structure at all, it's emotion. One woman in Buenos Aires found a rusted metal box buried behind her house. Inside were handwritten letters, never sent, addressed to a former lover. Her aunt had buried them in the 1960s, trying to forget a wartime affair, but the box was never meant to be uncovered. And once it was, something changed in the household. Arguments spiked. Her teenage daughter became withdrawn. Nightmares of betrayal surfaced. It wasn't the letters, it was the unprocessed grief brought back to the surface without preparation. So what does this mean for you? It means that what lies beneath your home deserves attention. If you live in an older property, ask about its past, not just who owned it, but what the land was used for. Was it a rice field, a military checkpoint, a marketplace? Was there a family dispute here, a tragedy, a burial, a broken promise? You don't need to fear the past. You need to greet it. If you suspect something may be buried below your space, whether a well, a foundation, a collection of unknown materials, do not disturb it lightly. Always proceed with intention. Before digging, pause. Offer incense. Speak words of clarity, such as, I move with respect. May what is uncovered be seen with kindness and resealed in peace. If you do excavate, whether for renovation or discovery, make space for closure. Do not simply fill in holes and repave. Acknowledge the breach. Cleanse it with salt, flowers, or candlelight. Let the earth know you have not forgotten its memory. And if nothing is buried beneath, but something still feels off, coldness rising from the floor, unexplained chills, emotional friction near certain corners, consider marking the space anyway. A simple circle of stones, a small tray of sacred ash, a bowl of soil topped with flower petals. These are not superstitions, they are acknowledgments, because land, like people, needs to be seen. In Buddhism, we speak often of karma, the chain of cause and effect, but less often do we speak of karmic geography, the idea that land too carries imprints. And when those imprints are heavy, unresolved, or denied, the space above begins to echo them. So make peace not just with what's in your home, but with what your home stands on. Because the floor you walk each day might be holding more than just your footsteps. It might be holding a story. And like all stories, it deserves to be heard, honored, and if needed, healed. A home does not start with walls, it starts with soil, and the soul of that soil will speak if you listen. Section 5. Piercing roads and aligning doors. The energy that doesn't stay. Some homes feel like shelters, others feel like transit stations. You walk in, but the energy doesn't stay. You clean, you decorate, you light incense and set intentions. But everything, focus, luck, money, even emotion, feels like it slips right back out, as if the house is breathing too fast to hold anything. In Feng Shui, the explanation is both simple and profound. Energy, like water, like wind, like breath, must slow down to be absorbed. It must curve, wander, arrive. When it moves too fast, when it is pushed through straight lines, narrow channels, or direct routes, it never nourishes. It only passes. There is a concept in classical Feng Shui called Qi, often described as attacking energy. But it doesn't always mean something dangerous or cursed. Sometimes Qi is just speed, an energetic current moving too fast, in too straight a line, without pause or diffusion. One of the most common culprits is the piercing road. Imagine a long, straight street that leads directly to your front door. To the untrained eye, it might look like good access, but energetically, it's a spear. Instead of welcoming prosperity and grounding it, the house becomes a target. Qi, instead of entering and settling, rushes in and keeps going. This can manifest as a home that feels tense, a space where conversations escalate without reason, or where money arrives only to disappear just as quickly. The same principle applies indoors. When 3 or more doors are perfectly aligned, say from the front entrance straight through the house and out the back door, your home is not holding energy. It's hemorrhaging it. Like air rushing through a flute, the space whistles but doesn't resonate. No wonder people feel unsettled. No wonder fortune cannot root. I once spoke with a therapist in Vancouver. Let's call her Maya, who had just moved into a new apartment in a leafy, peaceful part of the city. The unit was beautiful, open plan, filled with morning light. But shortly after settling in, something shifted. Her private clients began canceling last minute. New inquiries slowed. Her own ability to focus during sessions diminished. She felt scattered, anxious, even slightly invaded, as if people were entering her life and immediately walking out again. At first, she thought it was her practice. Maybe it was her tone, her method, the market. But then she began to notice the architecture. Her new apartment had an unusual layout. The front door, the living room doorway, and her office door were perfectly aligned in a straight row. If she stood at her desk and looked up, she could see out to the entrance in a single glance. There was no buffer, no pause, no bend. One morning, a client commented offhandedly, "Your space feels like a hallway, not a room." Maya smiled politely, but the phrase echoed. She sat on the floor later that day and just breathed, eyes tracing the line of the walls. She realized that the very energy of her home mirrored her business. Entry without presence, inquiry without retention. Instead of panicking or renovating, she went back to her training in Buddhist psychology. Awareness first. Disruption is information. Then she turned to Feng Shui principles. She consulted a practitioner who confirmed the diagnosis. The doors are aligned, energy does not stay. But he did not recommend rebuilding. He recommended soft resistance. Maya placed a tall bamboo planter just inside her front door, not to block, but to soften. She added a shoji screen just beyond her living room, which filtered the view to her office and interrupted the line of fire. And she adjusted the position of her desk by 10 degrees so that she no longer faced the doorway head-on, but at a slight diagonal. That week, her mood improved. The following month, her calendar filled again. Was it the screen, the plants, the slight angle of a chair? Yes, but not as magic, as metaphor, as architecture aligned with respect. Feng Shui is often misunderstood as a decorative superstition, but at its core, it's deeply rational. It asks, how does energy enter and what invites it to stay? And it answers with movement, with softness, with intentional resistance. In Buddhism, this same lesson appears again and again. The breath that nourishes is the one that slows. A breath that rushes in and out too quickly cannot deliver oxygen, cannot support clarity. It must be deep, it must be held, it must complete itself. So too with energy. When your home has too many direct lines, piercing roads, aligned doors, hallways that cut without curve, you're not just designing inefficiently, you're living inside a breath that cannot settle. No wonder your mind feels scattered. No wonder your rest feels shallow. No wonder the money comes but slips away. You don't need to rebuild your home. You need to redirect its exhale. Use plants, not just for air quality, but for interruption. Tall, soft-leafed greenery like bamboo, peace lilies, or even a trailing pothos can diffuse energy. Place them near doorways, not in the center, but slightly off-axis. Let the eye and the qi move gently, not directly. Use fabric. A curtain, a room divider, a woven screen can break a direct line without blocking light. It's not about separation, it's about softening. Use furniture, a round table, a curved chair, a corner shelf, anything that asks energy to pause, reflect, turn. Sasumart. A well-placed painting or calligraphy scroll can pull the eye, redirecting energy away from the linear path. Avoid sharp-edged pieces or overly dynamic images in these zones. Use calm symbols, waves, trees, clouds, calligraphic circles. Most importantly, understand the logic. Energy is not a laser, it is a current. A current must meander. Rivers that run too straight erode their own banks. Homes that direct qi too quickly destabilize their own spirit. If you stand in your front door and can see straight out the back, install a visual break. If your hallway feels like a bowling alley, use pendant lights or staggered frames to interrupt the path. If your space feels rushed, interrupted, unable to breathe, slow it with placement, not just cleaning. You don't need to block energy, you need to welcome it into stillness. In Buddhist design principles, temples and monasteries are never built with straight entrance lines. The path always curves. You walk through a garden, you pass through a gate, you climb a few steps. The architecture teaches your body to arrive, and when you arrive, you become present. Let your home do the same. Let it invite you, not push you. Let it hold, not leak. Let it teach you through curves and corners and slowed light how to stay. Because the difference between a house and a haven is often just a few feet of direction. And the difference between energy that comes and energy that stays is how gently it is asked to pause. Section 6. Heavy beams over beds and tables. Invisible pressure, visible consequence. We often look for what's missing when life feels off. What's not in the bank, what's not working in the relationship, what's not healed in the body. But sometimes the culprit is not absence, it's presence, something that is there, too heavy, too constant, too long ignored. A ceiling beam is one of those presences. To the architect, it's just structure. To the eye, it's just a wooden or steel bar holding up the ceiling. But to the body, to the mind, to the subtle systems of breath and sleep and nourishment, it's something else entirely. It is weight. It is compression. It is an invisible blade hovering above our softest places. In classical Feng Shui, beams are considered energetic knives, not because they are inherently negative, but because of how they function. They divide, they segment, they concentrate pressure in one line, cutting through the ambient flow of a room. And when that line passes directly over a bed or a dining table, two of the most vital resting points in a home, it begins to cut more than space. It cuts comfort, it cuts communication, it cuts healing. Let's begin with the bedroom. The bed is not just where you sleep, it is where the body surrenders, where the nervous system resets, where the subconscious unwinds its knots, where dreams are seated and repair begins. If the bed is the ground of restoration, the space above it must be sky, open, clean, unthreatening. Now imagine a beam overhead, long, narrow, direct. Even if it doesn't touch you, even if it's painted to blend in, your body knows it's there. Your fascia, your breath, your nervous system, they all register its presence. Over time, this subtle awareness becomes chronic tension. Not enough to keep you awake every night, but just enough to make rest incomplete. It's the kind of tension that causes you to toss, to clench your jaw in sleep, to wake at the same hour with a tight chest, to feel rested but never deeply replenished. You'll blame the coffee, the mattress, the neighbor's barking dog, but the beam remains hovering. In one Tokyo household, the consequences were sharper. A family of 4 had been living in a modern apartment on the city's western edge. Open plan, warm lighting, bamboo floors. But the parents, especially the mother, began experiencing odd health issues. Sleep was fragmented. The mother, A violin teacher began suffering from persistent migraines, always worse in the mornings. Their youngest child developed a pattern of night terrors. They tried medication, sleep training, aromatherapy. Nothing held. One evening, after putting the children to sleep, the mother sat up in bed and really looked at the ceiling. For the first time in years, she noticed the beam. A long, dark-stained timber cutting directly above the center of the bed. It aligned perfectly with her pillow. Her migraines had begun just after they moved in. She researched. She called a local practitioner familiar with both Buddhist energy systems and structural Feng Shui. He visited. After surveying the space, he nodded gently and said, "It's not the apartment, it's the pressure above your rest." He didn't suggest demolition. Instead, they rearranged the bedroom, moved the bed 3 feet to the left, under a clean part of the ceiling. The beam was still there, but no longer directly overhead. They also installed a light cotton canopy, just a suspended panel of cream-colored fabric, softly diffusing the line of the beam. The result was immediate. The next morning, the mother awoke without a headache for the first time in months. The child's nightmares diminished within a week. The room felt different, not brighter, not prettier, just lighter, as if something had been lifted from the air itself. This is the subtle power of vertical pressure. It doesn't bruise the skin, but it leaves marks on the psyche. Buddhism teaches that true rest is a condition of spaciousness. The body cannot regenerate when the spirit feels compressed. The mind cannot settle when the sky above it feels lowered. This is not metaphysics, it's physiology. Compression, whether emotional or architectural, leads to protection. And protection, when constant, becomes exhaustion. Now shift focus to the dining area. In Buddhist households, the dining table is not merely a place to eat. It is a circle of ritual, a space of exchange, nourishment, and communion. Even in Feng Shui, the dining table is often aligned with the energy of abundance, not just money, but support, family, cohesion. Place a heavy beam above that table, and you may begin to notice conversations that cut short, meals that feel rushed, conflict that simmers, or just a general sense that no one lingers after eating. It's not always the food. Sometimes it's the field, the energetic knife above the space of sharing. In one case, a restaurateur in California redesigned his home dining area after his business partner, a student of Taoist architecture, visited and commented, "This table feels like it's under surveillance." There was nothing wrong visually, but a dark, exposed beam ran directly above the long table, splitting it into 2 energy zones. They didn't tear the house apart. They simply installed a suspended rattan screen, light, perforated, and beautiful. It didn't block the beam. It softened it. Within weeks, their family dinners grew longer. The kids lingered, arguments quieted. No one talked about the screen, but everyone felt the shift. So what do we do if our homes have these beams? We do what the wisdom traditions always recommend. We soften. You can't always rebuild, but you can reframe. You can install fabric panels or canopies to interrupt the line of force. You can hang mobiles, prayer flags, or soft lanterns, not to block but to transform. You can shift your bed, reposition your table. You can acknowledge the beam, not as curse, but as teacher. It reminds us that rest is sacred and sacred things require shelter. You may also use Buddhist imagery, symbols of balance, of upward flow. A mandala, a rising lotus, a Bodhi leaf in gentle ascent. These are not decorations. They are anchors of the mind. When placed with care, they alter not the beam, but the consciousness beneath it. In classical Zen architecture, beams are never placed directly above key resting zones, not because of engineering, but because of empathy. The ceiling is red as sky. It should not feel like gravity. It should feel like grace. So look up, walk through your home and notice not just what you walk on, but what hangs above. Stand where you sleep, where you eat, where you pray. Ask your body quietly, do I feel pressed or held? If the answer is pressure, soften it. If the answer is weight, lift it with cloth, with art, with intention. Because the ceiling is not just the top of your room, it's the upper chamber of your energy. And if that chamber is heavy, your dreams will be too. Section 7. The safe place you must avoid. Sudden death, unfinished karma. There are houses you walk into and feel instantly welcomed, like an embrace made of light. And there are others, beautiful, well-designed, full of light and fragrance, that whisper something different. You can't explain it. It's not the decor, it's not the floor plan, it's not even the people. It's something in the walls, in the stillness between footsteps, in the air that doesn't quite settle, a low hum of something unresolved. Buddhism teaches that karma doesn't simply belong to people. It attaches to places. Events leave residues. Death in particular, especially sudden, violent, or self-inflicted death, imprints a space. Not because it is malevolent, but because it is incomplete. A karmic loop left open, a chapter closed too abruptly. That energy does not vanish with the person. It remains suspended in atmosphere, embedded in architecture, woven into the grains of the floorboards. This is not superstition. This is a spiritual form of gravity. Feng Shui too recognizes this. The land holds memory. When a life ends unexpectedly, when intention is interrupted, energy disperses chaotically. Like water poured too fast into dry soil it doesn't absorb. It splashes, lingers, pools in corners. And if the land is not acknowledged, if the space is not rebalanced, that residue begins to affect the next chapter, the next tenant, the next breath taken beneath that roof. There's a difference between a peaceful passing and a ruptured ending. When someone passes in their sleep, surrounded by family, there is sadness, but not fear. The energy can be closed. Rituals can be performed. The room, over time, becomes a sacred remembrance. But when someone dies by suicide, by accident, by unresolved violence, especially if it occurs within the home, the imprint is different. It's not only grief, it's confusion. It's trapped energy with nowhere to go. I once heard the story of a woman in Hanoi, an artist, quiet, deeply intuitive. She found an apartment that seemed perfect, renovated, affordable, located near a peaceful lake with bright windows and simple hardwood floors. The moment she stepped inside, she felt something pull in her chest. Not a loud fear, more like a chill beneath the skin. She shook it off, told herself it was nerves, excitement, the usual overwhelm of a move. She signed the lease, but after settling in, the unease deepened. She began having strange dreams. Not violent, just vague, heavy, incomplete. She would wake between 2 and 4 a.m. most nights, as if someone had called her name. Her cat stopped entering the bedroom. She noticed her own joy decreasing, her creative work stalling, and she felt watched, not by a presence, but by the house itself, as if the space demanded something she could not name. A friend finally asked her, "Do you know the history?" She didn't. A search revealed that the previous tenant, a young man in his 20s, had taken his own life in the apartment. It had happened 7 years ago. The owner had since renovated, repainted, replaced the floors, but no ceremony, no prayer, no spiritual closure. The energy had never been released, only covered. The woman contacted a local monk known for his compassion and clarity. He visited the home quietly, sat in each room, then nodded. "The house is not angry," he said. "It is confused. It is holding a story that has not been given an ending." He conducted a blessing ritual with incense, chanting, and fire offerings. He called on the local earth spirits and invoked the release of residual pain. He didn't force the energy out. He invited it forward. He offered it light. After the ritual, the woman wept, not from fear, but from relief. That night, she slept through until morning. Her dreams returned to softness. Her creativity began to flow again. This is the subtle reality of unfinished karma. It's not about ghosts, it's not about horror. It's about frequency. Places that hold unresolved trauma become environments of subtle dissonance. They confuse the nervous system. They erode confidence. They cloud the intuitive mind. You begin to second-guess your choices. You feel tired without cause. You lose track of time. You avoid the home without knowing why. And yet, not every death-marked house should be feared. Some can be transformed if approached with depth, with intention, and with ritual. But they must never be entered casually, Because the act of living in a space is a kind of spiritual cohabitation. If the space is still mourning, you must either mourn with it or offer it peace. If you must live in such a place, because of budget, because of location, because fate has placed you there, then enter with awareness. Consult a Buddhist practitioner, a monk, or an energy worker who understands how to conduct fire offerings or space clearing rites. Burn protective herbs, sandalwood, agarwood, sage, if appropriate in your tradition. Place fresh white flowers for 49 days to honor the wandering spirit. Let the space know you do not reject its history, but you offer it rest. Avoid placing your bed in the exact area where the passing occurred, if you know. Do not treat the room as ordinary. Place a Bodhi leaf, a lotus image, or a photo of a peaceful landscape to guide the energy toward clarity. Keep the space clean. Do not argue there. Do not store sharp tools there. Do not rush in and out. Make the room a temple, not to the past, but to the possibility of healing. And if, after all rituals, the space still feels heavy, if your health declines, your clarity dims, your joy fades, then be honest. Some karma is not yours to resolve. Some stories are not yours to finish. Sometimes the greatest wisdom is to leave. The Buddha taught that clinging, even to suffering, perpetuates the cycle. If a house refuses peace despite all effort, then honor it from afar. Light a candle outside, say a prayer for all who entered and exited, and then step away. Because your life deserves a space that supports your unfolding, not one that siphons your spirit. In Feng Shui, the home is an extension of the self. If the house holds secrets, you will too. If the house holds grief, your joy must fight to rise. And if the house holds a story that was never concluded, you may spend years trying to rewrite a script you never chose. So choose wisely. A home should be like a sacred bowl, holding your light, your rest, your dreams. If the bowl is cracked by tragedy, don't ignore it. Don't paint over it. Tend to it, heal it, or gently return it to the earth. Let your dwelling reflect your direction, not your denial. Final, there is a teaching in both Buddhist thought and Feng Shui practice that most people overlook. Your home is not something you live in. It is something that lives with you. Every beam overhead, every shadow at your front door, every soft breeze or stiff corner. These are not architectural choices alone. They are symbols, energetic agreements, and karmic reflections of who you are, who you've been, and who you're becoming. If your home has dead trees at the entrance, it may be telling you that something has stopped growing. If there are cracks along your central wall, it may be whispering of an inner fracture between partners, between your body and mind, or between your past and future. If sunlight never enters your favorite room, or the space beneath your ceiling feels heavier than it should, it may not be bad luck. It may be your home quietly asking for attention, for healing, for release. The Buddhist path often reminds us, everything is connected, and nothing hides forever. In that light, your home becomes more than shelter. It becomes your practice, your altar, your mirror. You don't need to believe in ghosts to believe in memory. You don't need to fear superstition to feel unease when you walk into a space where death was sudden, or energy was trapped, or breath could never fully exhale. What you feel in a room before anyone speaks, before anything happens, is often the most honest conversation of all. So what does your house say when you stop talking? Is it soft in the right places, bright where you need clarity, firm where you need boundaries? Or does it whisper of fatigue, of stuckness, of corners too sharp or energy too fast? A monk once said, "I do not just walk into homes, I walk into karma." And truly, your house tells a story long before you speak. The story is in the objects you keep, the doors that align too directly, the beams that press down where dreams try to rise. There is no perfect home, but there is a conscious one. A home that supports you doesn't have to be expensive, it doesn't have to be large, but it must be true. It must feel like a space where your nervous system can exhale, where your dreams are not interrupted by structural noise, where energy doesn't rush past you or pull behind you, but moves with you. So as we come to the end of this journey together, I leave you with one question. Is your home lifting you or slowly wearing you down? If it's the latter, you don't need to panic. You don't need to run. You simply need to see, then adjust with clarity, with care, with the understanding that your home is not the enemy. It's the echo of your choices. Make new choices. Soften beams, slow hallways, clean the safe, bless the space beneath your feet. Let go of what you didn't know was still speaking through the walls. Your space will respond, always. If this video gave you a new way to see your surroundings, your front door, your safe, your ceiling, your light, I gently invite you to leave a comment below. Maybe even write, "I choose a home that supports my peace." And if this kind of reflection nourishes you, I'd be honored if you would help me grow this space of learning. Just one like, one share, or one subscribe helps me get closer to my first 1,000 followers and allows me to continue offering these grounded teachings rooted not in superstition, but in sacred design, ancient wisdom, and quiet truth. This is New Day Mindfulness. And here we don't just talk about energy, we live in it, mindfully, simply, and together. Thank you.